our studies in praying like the Psalms. And if you recall, the reason I'm up here is because we have a rotating roster of teachers for this quarter. So I appreciate the intro that Jeff gave us. And I wanted to give a quick little recap of the lessons we've had so far. We've been talking primarily about the attributes of God. And one of the key first steps to praying like the psalmists is to see God the way that the psalmists saw him, and to have the same view of God as the authors of these poems saw their Creator and their King. So in our last lesson, we had the traits of God being that he is our King, and we talked about the implications of that. Imagining ourselves as supplicants approaching a throne that we have no power and no ability to really approach. If it helps to picture a vivid scene of, imagine layers of guards and gates and doors that you have to go through before you can even get close to seeing the king. That's how a king in our world might be viewed. It's so inaccessible. And yet, God is our king, and how that changes our approach. And this morning, we're going to be looking at some traits about ourselves. We're going to turn that focus inward and say, how do the psalmists, what picture do they paint of themselves? Thank you. And so that was kind of that intro paragraph. If you read that, it was stressing the importance of that. And since Jeff used the board to write down attributes of God, what we're going to do this morning is I want to use the board. I'm going to erase all this, so this is your last chance to look at it or snap a picture of the traits of God if you want to do that. Or I guess these are traits that we want out of our prayers, isn't it? I need to read the board, don't I? I'm going to erase this, and we're going to use the board to write down traits of ourselves based on the passages here. Before we start, I need 6 volunteers, 6 people to raise their hand. 1, 2, keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I should ask them.
Margaret, 6. No, you don't have to move. You can stay in your seat. Keep your hands up, please. Brace, can you turn to Psalm 88? Margaret, can you turn to Psalm 33? Ethan, Psalm 42. Elizabeth, Psalm 141. And Josh, 124. And Dad, 119. Verse 67 and 176, since that was a big one. I decided to try to shave a little time this morning. I'm not going to spend the time waiting for people to volunteer for readings. So when we get to those readings that are in the sheet, please, if I called on you and you raise your hand, just have those passages ready for us so we can move on through here. So to start off a little intro, we are talking about sheep. And the first question was asking us, if you saw someone with a sign that said, "Only sheep need a shepherd," what is the implications of that sign? Anyone have any thoughts on that thought question at the beginning?
It would imply you shouldn't be a sheep.
Why you shouldn't be a sheep?
That you shouldn't be.
That you shouldn't. And why is that? Because the Bible calls us sheep, right? And yet that sign is an insult to the person who wrote it. The person writing that sign and carrying it thinks, I'm insulting Christians for calling them sheep. Your own book calls you sheep. That's not spectacular, but that'll work. Oh, there's another eraser here. Okay, why is being called a sheep an insult, first of all? In the minds of this person, what are they really trying to say?
I think it's a term used today to imply that someone isn't thinking for themselves. They're following the crowd. They're being used as an instrument by others, unknowingly a tool in the hand of those who would manipulate them for their own purposes.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's you are gullible, you are incurious, you are people who you need someone to tell you what to do, you need someone to tell you how to think. You're not thinking for yourself, you're not being an individual. It's an insult. Sheep are referred to as stupid creatures, gullible creatures, just unstudious, anti-intellectual. It's funny because Multiple camps will call their opponents sheep. If you've ever listened to people who say the earth is flat or that the moon landing never happened, they'll say, "Wake up, sheep, you believe NASA, you sheep," and they'll use that same kind of insult when they are the ones who are clearly incapable of seeing blatant objective fact when it's right in front of them. Not to get too pointed there. But what are the traits of sheep that we can acknowledge here that maybe are some of the ones that they're calling attention to? I'll give you the first one, that sheep are prone to wandering. We put them in fences, we put them in pens, because sheep have a tendency to wander off. What else do you have? Go ahead, Ethan.
Sheep are also pretty flighty, get scared easily.
Yeah. Just shout them out.
They're not capable of protecting themselves against predators. They need protection.
I'll say helpless or defenseless. Okay. I think sheep are really ugly. That has nothing to do with our lesson. But boy, if you look at them in the eyes, it's just like, there's nothing behind those eyes. What else? Other traits? Wow, that's really faint, isn't it? What are some other traits of sheep?
They can be pretty dumb sometimes.
Yeah. Let's just call it like it is. I'll say not smart, just to put it as kindly as I can. And so these are just traits of physical, I'll say worldly sheep, maybe earthly sheep, and some of these, we would balk pretty heavily at some of these traits if they were described of us. But some of these too, as we go on, I think we're getting at something. Prone to wandering, helpless, defenseless. If we can be honest with ourselves as we're going forward in this lesson, I think we'll start to form a picture that there's something here. And we'll start to understand what the psalmist is trying to say by saying that we are sheep, that we are God's sheep. I don't necessarily believe that they are calling to the way sheep smell or the way sheep look when they're describing us as God's sheep, but it is some of more of the personality traits of sheep, you might say, that we have. At the end of the lesson, I'd also like to call out a few things that are easy to miss when we're kind of looking at this conflict of calling us sheep. Are we sheep? So we'll talk about that some more as we go on. Okay, so now I want to get into the passages for this morning's class. So if you raise your hands. Brace, did I tell you Psalm 70 or Psalm 88? Okay, so I'm going to read Psalm 70 first. I counted myself in the number of people and then promptly forgot. Psalm 70 verse 5 says, "I am oppressed and needy. O God, hurry to me. You are my helper and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay." Here the psalmist is saying this about those who are trying to take my life, those who are trying to ensnare me. They say, "Aha," and they want to destroy me. And he says to God, I am oppressed, I'm poor, I'm needy. I'm going to put in green, if it shows up, the traits that come from these psalms. Ooh, that's not going to work. I'm running out of color. Oh, there's a pack of new colors right here.
Can I make a comment on that, Andrew?
Absolutely.
I appreciated the comment from the psalmist about being, being needy, because, that's just super vulnerable, and I think if we said that to each other, that would be very difficult to even get at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. We tend to call someone needy as not a positive thing. We'll say, stop being so needy. We'll encourage someone to grow up and stop whining and being so needy. And that's not a positive thing usually when we use it in conversation. at the end, I'll spoil it a little bit. Be thinking about which are some of these traits that really offend you or make you feel uncomfortable. And I want to be honest with you about the ones that make me feel uncomfortable. Needy is one of those. I catch myself being very needy sometimes and very whiny about what I think I need. And I don't like to see that reflected in myself. I don't like to see the Psalms reading that back to me and saying that as a sheep, I am needy. And even more than just the whininess maybe that we're used to, needy is just, I am in need. Some translations might say poor or destitute. The idea of just, I am bereft of anything. I have nothing. Like a pauper, like a beggar, I'm without anything. So 2 ways to think about that term needy. It is a very vulnerable term. You're right, Samantha. Any other comments on Psalm 70? Okay. Brace, go ahead and read our Psalm 88 reference for us.
Psalm 88, verse 4. They treat me like those who descend into the grave. I am like a helpless man.
Okay. So what are some words we get out of this one? Some characteristics. Helpless. We've got that one on the board. Helpless. Reading the verses immediately prior and after, it's really struck me, and I was looking into the root language a little bit to try to understand it better. This, let's see, Psalm 88. They treat me like those who descend into the grave. I'm like a helpless man. Adrift among the dead, like corpses lying in the grave, whom you remember no more, and who are cut off from your power. This imagery gets translated a few different ways, but it's very, very visceral language. And what it kind of literally translates to is, imagine a battle that has taken place, and there are just dead all over the battlefield, and they are just all pushed into a mass grave. A trench is dug, and the bodies are just piled on top of each other, and they're covered up. And there's no name, there's no grave marker, there's nothing to remember where they were, who they were. They're forgotten. Is kind of the notion there. So, forgotten maybe? The word Sheol is not used in this passage, but Sheol is another word for the grave or the pit that's used here. And that pit is sometimes the same idea as oblivion, which means to just be gone from the mind, forgotten. What goes into Sheol, it's just forgotten and it disappears. It's gone forever. Okay. Any other topics or any other descriptors to pull out of Psalm 88? No? Okay. Psalm 33. I believe that was Margaret.
Psalm 33, 10 through 19. There is no king saved by the multitude of the host. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. A horse is a vain thing for safety. Neither shall he deliver in by his great strength. Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy, to deliver their soul from death, and to keep them alive in famine.
Okay, thank you. So, one that might take a little bit more interpretation, a little bit more reading into the word pictures here. But what were some ideas for traits that you gathered from Psalm 33 here in this reference?
The thing that came to my mind is that you can't do it by yourself.
Okay. Let's see. Might call that being dependent.
Yes.
I think that's with an A.
Put down that strength is an illusion. I think it's not only the neediness and the dependency, but it's the idea that I'm well equipped when I'm really quite exposed.
Okay. So there's a misplaced trust in Psalm 33. the kings and the rulers and the people in the nations, they put their trust in the things they can see that they know to be defenses. Horses, chariots, walls, all the things that they're used to defending them. And the psalmist here is telling them, that's all nothing. You are completely defenseless and you don't know it. So, yes, I would agree. It's an illusion of strength rather than having actual strength to defend you. I had helpless, again, from this one, so I'll underline it again. Helpless comes up a lot in some of these. And so we'll talk about that idea of helplessness a little bit. I was looking up other words, and I don't know, the word hapless came to my mind, and hapless and helpless are not synonyms, and I decided hapless is the wrong word to use here. Hapless means unfortunate, like you're unlucky all the time. If somebody keeps falling into trouble and just bad things always seem to happen to them, you might say that they are hapless. Not the word you want to use here. Ethan, you had a comment?
It was extremely similar to what Greg said, but I was thinking of the words deceived or deluded.
Deluded, I think, is with a... I don't know if that's right. Yes. So, again, there's something blocking your vision where you are confident in something that is not true. You are affirmed about an idea that you are wrong to hold. And that's the idea here. Brace, did you have a hand? Oh, okay. Maybe the other concept that's been stated other ways is lacking anyone to save or lacking anyone else to rescue. That's another trait here. Okay, Psalm 42. I think that was Ethan.
Yeah, I think that.
Sorry, I didn't write down who raised their hands. So
I couldn't remember for sure. Psalm 42, 5 through 11. Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. My soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember you from the land of Jordan and of Hermon, from Mount Hazar. Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have gone over me. By day the Lord commands his steadfast love, and at night his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As with a deadly wound in my bones, my adversaries taunt me, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God.
okay, thank you. So this one's chock full of terms. What are some descriptive words that stood out to you from this psalm? What caught your eye? What caught your ear?
I think Ethan used in the ESV, he used cast down, the NET uses depressed.
Yep.
Which I really like because it's, I don't know, a little deeper perhaps than, or maybe just a more common word that we would use today than the idea of being cast down. I think they're probably both.
It is, and it does speak to us a little better. I would agree with that. The idea of being cast down, or to have a cast down appearance of the face, appeared a lot in the ancient texts, in these Hebrew texts. That was the way that they would make the expression of you seem down, you seem depressed, and we would use depressed a lot in our modern language today. So I agree. That's a good parallel way to view that term.
I like the word despondent with that because it's a display of depression, I think. It's a reaction while in a depressed state. And in this case in particular, it's the loss of trust in God where the psalmist knows God's attributes and has forgotten them almost by choice.
Right. I think a parallel word that I had in my notes was despairing. Maybe one that the NET uses too, where despondent or despairing, it's a throwing up of the hands, in a sense. I'm letting go of whatever else I was holding on to because it's too much. I'm giving up. I'm giving in to the sorrow, to the depression. Ethan?
The questioning and then the repeat of turmoil brought to mind the word restless.
Restlessness.
ESTLE.
Huh?
W. Isn't there a W in front of restless?
No, that would be like wrestling. Wrestle. Oh, you
That's what it is.
interrupted my train of thought, Dad. Okay. Restlessness. And that's a great one for sheep. You know, sheep can get stirred up a lot when anything enters the fold, when there's a dog nearby or some other animal that they're not familiar with. Sheep get restless if you're in the 4-H barns in the fair, and you can just tell these animals are uncomfortable. They are not used to being here with all these other animals and all these people walking around, and it's a restless environment. It's a noisy, chaotic place. Bryce?
I think it's significant that in this psalm, at least in the context that Ethan read, just a few verses, the psalmist says that he is depressed or despondent 3 times, and then uses another term in the NET, upset, a couple of times. And so this is not a passing sadness; it is a deep state. I mean, that he is stuck, and so he's crying out to God in his despondency. So just the significance of repeating how seriously he is depressed or downtrodden.
Yeah. I'm going to add feeling trapped, mourning. The psalmist is in mourning here. And he says, I'm being taunted. He laments that he is the subject of taunting as well. We've been taunting sheep a little bit, even in our conversation this morning. So that's one that fits, certainly. Jim?
Yeah, you talk about sheep. That comes to my mind. Jesus in his personal ministry, he saw the people. He said, they're like sheep without a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Sheep need a shepherd. Shepherd needs sheep. Jesus is a shepherd. We're the sheep. We need him every day.
Absolutely.
As a brother years ago, about 50 years ago, Brother Collins, he became a Christian in his 90s. And he had a saying about sheep. He said, 2 heads are better than one, even if one's a sheep's head.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And Jesus saw the same traits in first century Israel that we're talking about. He saw people that were prone to wandering and that needed guidance and needed leadership. He saw people that had forgotten a lot of the things that they needed to know. They were also people who were defenseless and who were oppressed. Oppression is one of the terms that we've got up here on the board, and Jesus saw his people as oppressed, not just oppressed under the Roman rule. That wasn't the oppression that Jesus was going to liberate them from. He saw them oppressed under sin. The oppression that probably none of them would have said we're being oppressed by. If you asked the Israelites or people in first century Israel, who is your oppressor? They would say, wrong. Of course. But it was sin that Jesus saw we are oppressed by. We are under that oppressor. So, good thoughts. All right. I think, Liz, Psalm 141, verse 8.
My eyes are fixed on you, O sovereign Lord. In you I take refuge. Do not give me over to death.
Okay. Thank you. So and maybe you needed to, in your own study, if you looked a little bit in the context, either before or after, did you pull any thoughts out of Psalm 141? What were some of those descriptors that you got from those? What are your thoughts there?
Destitute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, destitute again. Where's that one? I got to underline it again. I'm underlining the ones that are repeated that we see again. Did I not write destitute? Oh, I guess not. Okay. Destitute. That's one of the ones that I saw as well. Defenseless was one that I think was repeated in this one. And that one I'm sure I wrote down. Defenseless. Any other notes or thoughts folks had from 141? This one was a little more abstract, I agree. I saw likely to fall into a trap, because he's saying in verse 9, protect me from the snare that they have laid for me and the traps that evildoers have set. The reason I say that that's one of the characteristics of the psalmist is because he is asking God for help in that area. He is saying to God, protect me from the traps that have been laid for me, because the psalmist knows I am prone to fall into those traps if not for God's help. If I don't have God, I will fall into that trap. Grace?
Along those same lines, verse 4 says, do not let me have evil desires or participate in sinful activities with men who behave wickedly. And so the idea that in watching those who are wicked, who are attacking the defenseless and helpless, help me not to decide to become like them so that I don't have to face this difficulty and this struggle.
Okay,
That's
so
a theme in the Psalms a lot.
being wicked or being prone to be tempted to wickedness, I would agree. That's present here. Josh, can you look at Psalm 124 for us, please?
Had it not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, had it not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, they would have swallowed us alive, when their anger was kindled against us. Then the waters would have engulfed us, the stream would have swept over our soul. Then the raging waters would have swept over our soul. Blessed be the Lord, who has not given us to be torn by their teeth. Our soul has escaped as a bird out of the snare of the trapper. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth.
Okay, thank you. So as we're looking at these traits, one thing I really found helpful is if it's hard to pull out exactly what they're getting at, try to picture it this way. And this psalm does a fantastic job of doing it for us. This psalm lays out a picture of what would be if not for God, and then the contrast of what is because God is with us. So the category, the characteristics of sheep, what would we be if not for God in this psalm?
Damsel in distress.
We would be distressed, overwhelmed, I heard.
I see torn apart like an animal would tear their meal apart.
Torn,
Consumed.
consumed, yeah,
Without hope.
hopeless. Some very strong admissions of despair and pain in this psalm. When I think of overwhelmed, have you ever been to the beach? You ever been to the beach when the swell is heavy and strong? And of course, when we were kids, we just got to be in the water. You know, it doesn't matter what the waves look like. We've got to be down there in the water. And man, it just boom, the waves would hit you in the face, and boom, and it hit you again, and you're sputtering and you're spitting out the salt water, and you barely can see, and then another wave, boom, just hits you, and you're down again. And you know, there's times when you're a kid when you're like, is this it? Am I going to die? Like, is this the end of my life? Because I'm just getting swamped by these waves over and over. I am overwhelmed by these waves. And so the psalmist here is saying, you know, this would have overwhelmed me. I would have been just buried by the pressure of all of this had it not been for God. Eric, would you be able to look and see if the sheets are on the printer? I sent a signal to the printer to try to print something, and I wonder if it worked. So I didn't tell you this ahead of time. My goal is for each of these lessons that we do, these 4 classes, I want to try to find a hymn that comes from one of the Psalms that we're talking about, and we'll sing it at the end of class. Looks like he does have sheets. Very good. So this is kind of a newer song. We did it once, but it's Had It Not Been the Lord. And this comes directly one for one from this hymn. So would you be able to distribute those, sir? Thank you so much. Just so we have those ready when class ends. We don't need them right this moment. Okay, and then Dad, I asked you for Psalm 119, 67, and 76. 176.
Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep thy word. 6. I have gone astray like like a lost sheep. Seek thy servant, for I do not forget thy commandments.
Okay. So pretty clear from this one. It just says it outright, astray. And this one really kind of brings it all together. Astray like a lost sheep. This is what we've been discussing this whole time. Very clearly stated here. Any other thoughts folks had from 119? Any other words that you wanted to pull out of those psalms? Okay. And then 141 we already looked at, so I think that's a typo because I didn't have any other thoughts to add to that one. We looked at 141 further up in the list. Okay. So my question now to you is, as you look at this list, there's a lot of negativity in this list. You might feel that as you're looking at it. As we keep adding on to these, you might go, wow, despondent, despairing, overwhelmed, trapped? Am I dependent? My strength is an illusion? I'm wicked? What is your reaction to this list? I'll tell you mine first. I'll share before I ask you to share. When I look at this list, for me, the words that offend me the most are helplessness, needing rescue, defenseless, and needy. Those are difficult words for me to swallow. And I ask myself why. Why is it so hard for me to accept that I'm helpless or to accept that I need rescue? And it's because of my pride. Pride is a big issue for me. And I think that those words expose the fact that I need help. And in my pride, I tell myself, no, I can handle it. I can take care of my own problems. I am competent. I'm capable. And so these words fly in the face of that belief that I'm self-sufficient. And that's a belief that I have to wrestle with. God, in these Psalms, asks me to admit in prayer to Him that I am helpless and that I need rescue. So think about that as we're looking at this list. If any of these don't seem like they describe you, God is showing you by example that the psalmist would identify these to their God and say, God, I am helpless. God, I am trapped. God, I am hopeless. God, I am distressed. And by voicing these and making them real, by saying them in these psalms, the psalmists they're attacking the thing that they know is their weak point. They're attacking the thing that they know they don't want to admit about themselves. So that was my emotional reaction to some of these terms. What thoughts do you have, Ethan?
As I look at all of that too, I think once you get to that point of admitting that that is what I am, there's also a sense of relief as to, being seen as you are and not having to fight against that. So I get maybe being identified or seen brings relief.
Yeah, I agree. It's not one of the Psalms we looked at, but the psalmist who admits their sin after holding on for so long describes that when I didn't speak, I wasted away. It rotted me from the inside out. And so speaking it out was the solution to that. So great relief. Good comment there. Other reactions, John.
A few years ago, David disappeared for like 54 days. And as you've got a son now, as you go through life, when something like that happens, and I didn't know if he was alive, had no information. All of those words that you kind of don't like up there, they're gonna be real to you when something like that happens. I know that's how it went for me.
Yeah, these things strike us, and these things can rise up. They can be heavier, and there can be seasons and periods of time when they're stronger or not. But I think the thing that God wants us to learn from these Psalms is that it bears identifying the feeling, identifying the emotion, identifying what it is that is paining you is a crucial step in how we form our prayers to God. So that maybe this is kind of leading us into the next question. How does this help us in our prayers? What are some thoughts that you all had for taking this list, because it might be easy to turn this into a beatdown. You know, we read all of these traits and we think, oh, I'm just horrible, I'm just terrible, and it can send us down a spiral of self-hatred or this self-deprecation. I don't know if that's the intent here necessarily, but I want to see what you all think. Chet, I think you had a hand.
It shows us that we need dependence on God to bring us through.
It does.
Through His assurance of His word, we can live a life that's acceptable to Him.
Absolutely. This trap that so many people are in, I don't need God. I'm okay. I don't need to be forgiven of anything. I haven't done anything that bad. A lot of people go through life thinking, you know, it's fine if you're a Christian. I don't really feel like I need that. I'm good. I'm okay. And that is a mind trap that the world is trapped in. And these ideas of being sheep, being helpless and weak and defenseless and just stupid and prone to wandering, they snap us out of it. They snap us out of that mind trap that I don't need anything. And as soon as that trap starts to break and we can admit, yes, I am in need, then God can start to work and prayer can start to really take a much more meaningful effect for us. So absolutely, it's needed to remind us and break us out of that trap. Brace?
These psalms and those words do two things for me. One is it's somewhat comforting. Actually, both of the things that it does are comforting. One, to know that I'm not the only one who's felt some of these things and experienced those things in my life. And I'm not talking about just before I came to the Lord. I'm talking about while a child of God, while a Christian, to feel some of those things and think, what's wrong with me? Well, other people felt the same way, and they expressed that to God. And the second thing that's comforting about it is to know that, as you just said, when we can acknowledge this is where we are, and that this is our state without God, healing can begin, because God is there, ready to help and assist with all of those things. He's ready to help in every one of those areas. Whatever it is that we need, God is willing and ready to provide.
Yes. It steers us in the direction toward God, because I think we often fool ourselves. You know, I've got this problem and I'll pray to God about it, but I need to deal with it. You know, I'll pray to God to help me, but this is my problem to deal with. And any one of these terms, whatever it is that we're kind of spiraling in, the psalmists want us to remember that it's not pray to God and then go work out your own problems. No, it's every problem, take it to God. Every problem, give it to God, and trust that God will work on your problems for you and with you. So I would agree that it's necessary to remind us that God is not just the helper, He's the solution. Other thoughts? How this helps our prayers? Jim?
Yeah, over the years of trying to save people, you hear some strange things or ideals when they're standing before God. This one nice gentleman, never forgot. I tried to get him to come to the Lord. He said, my mother told me when I was a baby, he said, if I died, I'd go to heaven. He said, I'm just as good as I was when I was a baby. So he never come to the Lord.
Yeah. We can believe some strange things about ourselves. And we can believe that we're one way and we can have an inflated view of ourselves. It just goes to show how important it is. Like, don't substitute the truth of God for a cute saying, you know, or just a feeling that everything's going to be okay. It's more important to really take the time to examine ourselves and what is our state. And this is teaching us our state. Our state is as sheep. We're getting close to the end here. I wanted to ask another question. I don't think this one was on the sheet. Can you embrace the moniker of sheep or not? How difficult is that for you? It's still difficult for me to embrace I am a sheep because of the things we talked about at the very beginning. You know, the gullibility, the incuriousness, the dependency. Those are hard things for me to swallow. But Are there any ideas that help you when it comes to recognizing I am a sheep, and it's not a bad thing to say I am a sheep? Was there anything that helped you? Or if it's difficult for you, you can share that as well. We can talk about that. I'll share one thing, is don't forget also the good that comes of being God's sheep. And what I mean by that is, look at Psalm 23 again. Psalm 23 is the good shepherd. And what is the shepherd doing for the sheep? The benefits of being in God's fold is that the sheep are guarded. They are protected from threats. They are fed. They have God who will pursue them and go after them if they stray away, and God who will fight for us. There is great comfort, there is great assurance, and there is great pride in being a sheep in God's fold. So that psalm paints a very different picture than maybe we've been dwelling on here. Another side of being a sheep is I am cared for. I am pampered as a sheep in God's fold. Think about that. So that's one of the things that helped me a little bit is don't forget that being God's sheep means it's a very privileged position to be God's sheep. This is a unique relationship that there are sheep outside of the fold that don't get to enjoy. Uh-oh, there's the bell. Well, thank you all for your comments this morning. Is there one more copy of that sheet? Oh, never mind, I don't need it. I've got it here, actually. Let's sing, or try to sing. It's a little new to us, but I think we can do it. Had it